Okay, so chapter 4, time creates money. So a couple different stories of, um, I mean, for one, the first thing I'm getting is for sure you have to invest in people. You can't just like, you're going to have to invest, you're going to have to put money out. There's kind of no way
Yeah.
around that. They don't talk about money a lot, like how much people are paying people to be their who's. But
Right.
in these two chapters, it finally starts talking about literally how much they're paying,
Hmm.
but then what it's worth. So like when they talked about in either 4 or 5, like the guy who pays the Uber, like first he said a driver, and then they went back and specified he pays an Uber driver $50, which I'm like each way or per day.
Right.
But it's so smart that he is like freeing his time up instead of spending all that time at home away from his family prepping for his stuff. He has like a quiet zone. He
Right.
so smart. He doesn't have to think about directions, which most people are like, well, it's not that big of a deal to
It
think
takes
about
up mental
directions.
space though.
Totally. Like if you could have
Ton.
30 minutes, show up at your meeting, calm, someone picked you up on time, you're not going to delay because the guy is waiting and he'll leave in 3
Yep.
minutes and he'll say, your guy's coming.
Yep.
So you'll climb in the car ready or not. You'll for sure be there on time. You can schedule them all ahead. I'm sure he probably got like the same guy in the neighborhood or whatever,
Oh,
like the same couple
probably.
guys to be his guy. But um oh, so the first one I thought was so smart that he hired the lady and was like, could you also do these things? And I was like,
Yeah.
man, if someone restocked my fridge every week.
Right.
And then I'm thinking, like, when our oldest is driving, we should do that.
Right.
We should pay our oldest child. Here's the grocery list.
No,
Go
there
get
should.
these things. Fill up my car with gas while you're at Kroger, pick up the groceries,
Yeah.
and put my car through the car wash, and I'll pay you every week.
Super smart.
That would be awesome. And like they need money and we need the time, and they're totally capable of doing that.
Yeah.
And like even laundry, like
Hmm.
we pay our kids to do lots of chores. I haven't yet offered to pay my kids for laundry. But like I said, with the cleaning ladies, I figured out because if you pay them to wash it, dry it, remake it, that's a longer ask. But a friend had
Uh-huh.
said, I just have a second set. And so it's just the time for them to put on a new set and strip it. And then I wash it and dry it. And I was like,
Yeah.
that's so worth it though.
Hmm.
So I'm thinking now I could have my kids do that, which I have had, but I have them do it on their own beds, but I'm going to ask them to start doing it on my bed.
Yeah.
Because then they do theirs, I do mine. But I could just be like, hey, who wants $3 to strip my sheets and put on fresh sheets?
Yeah.
And then you climb in bed and you're like, that's great.
I didn't do this.
Or like flip my towels, right?
Right.
Fresh towels in the bathroom. Here, backup sets are in the cabinet. Thank you. So I love that idea. And he didn't have to think about that anymore. His was a little bit more because we would have to task out what groceries we want because we're still doing the cooking.
Right.
But in his, as a bachelor, I'm sure he didn't. He was just like, give me good
Right.
foods that I can eat and give me
Yeah.
variety. And this is kind of what I like to eat. And then she gets to own it, which I love because I'm sure that's the biggest thing is they get to own then what they're purchasing. And it's not this like, well, why did you get sour cream? I don't like that. Or did you get this on sale though? Like that's where the micromanaging has to go away. And you just have
Hmm.
to be like, thank you. I'll work with
Yeah.
it. So that's another thing I got is that like the micromanaging of the who's will hold you back if you're always like grasping onto the
Right.
details. I love his comments of I know I'm being successful when I agree with all of these. I can live anywhere. I can wake up and say, what do I want to do today? My passive revenue exceeds my lifestyle. I'm working on projects that excite me and allow me to do my best work. I can disappear for several months with no effect on my timeline. And for us, it wouldn't be disappearing as more. It's just like
Right.
having the freedom to choose to maybe like go to
Right.
Europe for 2 months in the summer, you
Hmm.
know, things like that around school. There are no whiny people in my life.
Right. I'm
I
like, oh, I have to cut out some children.
I wear my watch for curiosity only. I have no time obligations or deadlines. I do have an Apple Watch, but I like that I'm not always like, ooh, ooh. Like I do wear it as a watch. I don't use it as like a constant notification and texting. I don't have anything buzzing when I get something.
Yeah.
Um, I wear what I want all the time. I think you and I are already kind of there. So, and
I
I can
don't
put
care
any
enough
time.
not to.
Yeah. So of those, do you feel like you're already at any of those?
In some ways,
Okay.
like maybe not like fully
Yeah.
in all of them. Like I feel like in some ways, like I do feel like I get to spend my time in a lot of ways that I do like. Part of that is like just choosing not to care about certain things, so I don't spend my time on them. Like I
Right.
said last, like I don't freaking care if my house is kind of messy. Like
Right.
it bothers me sometimes, but mostly it doesn't. It doesn't bother me enough to spend my time doing it because I'd
Right.
rather be doing something else.
Right.
So I guess and this was interesting too. I was talking to David about this because I'm like, there's this like, I don't want to say gap, but there's this like if you're not already at a certain income, like some of these things are just like of getting who's it's like working up to the place to be able to have the expendable income to get the who's,
Mhm.
or how can you get creative to get the who's at a rate that you actually can afford? Like who are the who's you can afford now?
Yes.
And instead of like thinking, oh well, that's out of reach for me.
Or how one of them, he said, get me to this. And when she started getting him to that, then he took a risk and gave her a bonus if she could do that. Not, I'll give you the
Uh-huh.
bonus anyways, and hopefully you'll get that. But if you can guaranteed get me to this, then I can
Mhm.
guaranteed give you this bonus
Yeah.
because that will mean that I will have gotten to this place financially, right?
Right.
Like if
Yeah.
you get me on 600 podcasts or whatever his thing was. Uh,
Right.
and it says here, it has led him to finding who's for nearly every aspect of his life. But led isn't he did it all at once.
Right.
It meant that, like you're saying, one at a time. And then he's like,
Right.
okay, who next? As he's growing in his income, who next
Right.
can I carve that off and then continue to grow?
Yeah.
So years later, he has Mandy, but then he also has an admin assistant, a chief operations officer. It doesn't mean he had all those day one.
Yeah.
Um, so I love that. Like I feel like several of mine, I am there, but I would love to be them even more.
Yeah.
Um, I like just the simple thing that says you can have way more money if you commit to having more money. And that I think has to do with your relationship with money. There's like some book from a Japanese guy called Happy Money. Have you heard of that? And
Uh-uh.
it's all about how money should be exchanged, not with like just happy, like it should be received with joy, it should be given with joy. And the more
Yeah.
you think of it less as this like scarcity transaction, the more
Hmm.
you are open to receiving and the more you're open to giving. And it becomes like this Japanese like yin yang flow thing. I haven't read it, but
Yeah.
that's the premise of it. So I think your relationship with money matters and how it's saying like negative thinking negatively impacts how you spend your time, which then impacts your freedom of money. Um, so then there's the Uber guy, and it says if you free yourself up from the tasks, you free up your mind to go to different places. So I think
Mhm.
that's the key is in harnessing your mind to not go into coping things and
Mhm.
mind numbing chill outs or like I used to talk to a lot of friends on walks and then after a while like my sister-in-law and then like or I'd talk to her in my house where I was like
Mhm.
I should be working while I'm here. If I'm going to talk to her, I should do Marco Polo while I'm driving.
Yeah.
Or in a different way versus if she's calling, I don't need to answer right now in the middle of me reading and talk to her for 40 minutes. I actually don't have to pick it up at all. And I can,
Yeah.
hey, in the middle of something, I'm working. I'll Marco you later, or can I call you on Saturday or Sunday?
Yeah.
And that can be my time. So I typically call my aunt when I'm walking a dog and I say, I'll be back in like, hey, I'm almost back to the house. So I do have to go. And she's like,
Mhm.
oh, okay. Like no matter what we're talking about, I don't let it carry into the house because she'll
Mhm.
just go for like 3 more hours. So I have to
That's
like
like
have
another
a
one.
cutoff to guard my boundaries so that she feels like we connected, but I can cut it off, you know? And I feel like
Yeah.
our parents' generation has gotten really good at like, actually, mom, I gotta go. They're like, oh, okay, you know?
Yeah.
And then we don't call them back and nobody cares.
Right.
So, you can invest in education, mentorships, collaborations. And then I think you have to guard yourself against investing so much into those that you don't create, right? That you're avoiding
Yeah.
with learning and learning and learning and learning and inspiration and learning, you know?
Yeah, the mastermind I'm in right now. Early on, we talked about, because it's an 8-week intensive to like really do a deep dive and get ready to do whatever launch you're working on. And after that, our mentor was like, after this, like turn learning mode off. There's so many good things you could consume, but just turn learning mode off and put your head down and just freaking be in the creation and in the work. It's not time for learning. This is all implementation time.
Yes.
Because there's a high that comes from learning, at least for me. Like I feel productive when I learn. I feel like I'm doing something. I feel good. It triggers things off in my brain that I'm like, oh, this is amazing.
Mhm.
But that's not like learning's not getting me income.
Right.
It just makes me feel good.
Mhm.
So
Totally.
you have to discipline that.
And you have like the energy from the group and you're like, yeah, we
Mhm.
can do it. Like, yes, I'm breaking down barriers. I'm resetting my mindset. And then you can easily be like, what's next? Like
Right. Shiny
what's the
object
next
syndrome.
thing that I'm going to register
Big thing.
for? Yeah. But it's the doing that actually fills up your real cup,
Mm-hmm.
right? And it can't be one or the other. You can't keep doing, I hate these things. You can't keep doing without the challenging of the growth and the masterminds
Yeah.
and like, you know, those opportunities too.
Right.
Um, I thought about this, like beyond keeping you out of flow. I thought about my husband making a lot of decisions, exhausts your willpower and drains your vision. He probably needs like some type of an assistant or to
Mm-hmm.
offload some stuff to me. And he's like a do it all, but I watch him and I'm watching his like, he's, and he does have ADD, but he's always like, I have so many things to do and I have so many things to do. And I have so many things to do. Like so many things are running through my head. And I was just kind of like,
Yeah.
what if you just said, like, what if I just, when I'm home, I bring you lunch every week. Like I make myself lunch and I make you a lunch
Mm-hmm.
because my mind isn't that intense at this point in my business. It's not that like stressed out. I'm like in a happier point. But if
Yeah.
you're not, and that's like one more thing you need to think about and do, or like, are there things that I can offload or
Uh,
pay me $100 a month and I'll cover your, you know what I mean? Like, I don't know,
yeah.
like, I'm just trying to think like, what are things that he can pass forward and not feel like I have to do all of it. Like
Yeah.
what are things that I could take over, um, that you feel like you have to do? I don't know.
Yeah.
And just asking him like, because you're doing all of that, what could I help you with? And then if I have like an running massive to-do list for the house, what are things that every Saturday you could knock off one
Mm-hmm.
thing so that I'm not like, oh, and we have to fix this thing. And oh, I still need to do that.
Right.
And then that's clouding my mind from my growth in my business. So how can we
Yeah.
who each other? Like stuff
Right.
that's not a big deal for me, but is a big deal for you. And I'm sure there's things that are not a big deal for you that are a big deal for me. So
Yeah.
just kind of like, and then talking about that as a family too, right? Like this is a
Yeah.
big pain for me. Would anyone be open to doing it to earn $5? And then if a kid's like, I'll do that, like that'd be fun. Or like Naraya loves organizing. So like try to find their gifts and what they can do.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe employ 13-year-olds, or we had talked about like if we have bark, like getting the young men, we did that in California to come pay them $20 and do the bark. And they can turn on some
Yeah.
music, do it together. And we have who's that get it done versus paying someone random.
Right. Yeah. I have a whole list of who's I need soon.
Um, I love that his podcast line I wrote, make the process incredibly easy for me so that the only thing I have to think about is showing up, and how that is really the goal in our businesses is like, I mean, not that we don't have to do the work or the connections or like the relationships or like the work itself, but what if other things could be done? Like so like I hired an assistant a year ago and I've been trying to do that for like 3 years to run certain parts of my business that
Mhm.
that I sometimes avoid or don't love doing or do out of necessity, but it's not the part of my business that I love.
Yeah.
Other people it is. Like other people are like, oh, the connecting with people is harder, but I don't mind the behind the scenes and like the, you know, the running the numbers. And I was like,
Yeah.
oh, I do. So same principle, like she makes it go away.
Hmm.
She makes it go away. And every day I'm like, oh, she did this up. Oh, good, that's up. Oh, that's running. That page is running. That thing is in. That, you know, the things are happening, or there's a new launch and she is getting something out. And I'm like, great, she's already thought it through. I just need to tweak it. But it's like it's plug and play for them, and that's their job. And so while
Yeah.
I could do it all myself, and Jan has been like, you're spending money. And I was like, money is my time. So like you haven't noticed that like I'm around and available more because I
Yeah.
hired somebody. Like that's worth it. And I can scale her up and down like as my
Mhm.
business grows. So I think that's another thing to think through is like how they found these people. Is there somebody that's open to scaling? Is there somebody that could clean my house, but at a certain price point, I could say, hey, how about grocery shopping? Oh, I lost my job completely. How about just the house cleaning? You know, or how
Yeah.
about grocery shopping? How about making beds? How about doing laundry? And have a relationship that's scalable, I think is also something to look for with people.
Yeah.
Um, and if he's doing the scheduling, which is what I was doing with my work, I'm diminishing my potential for freedom of both time and money. By having someone else support your vision, you have more time and more money, and then both those people are more successful. So the girl that works for me has more income doing what she loves to do best, and I get peace of mind and more income doing what I love to do best. Um, I wrote by better valuing, or this whole paragraph, better valuing and maximizing your time, you will be able to radically improve your income. The quality of your work will improve. The clarity of your vision will increase because you won't be so busy with all the urgencies involved in day to day. You'll have who's to handle many, if not most, of your logistical decisions. So that's not like our kids and their emotions. It's like the logistics of our actual business, giving you the
Mhm.
freedom of time to make decisions that will ultimately create enormous amounts of money for you. And then I liked how it said money avoids the person who doesn't value their time. I think that should have been like a quote of it,
Yeah.
because that's kind of a harsh statement.
Yeah.
It avoids the person because everyone would say, "Oh, I value my time." But
Right. Everyone says
are we
that.
really maximizing 9 to 8, right? Or 9 to 10? So money will naturally avoid the person who doesn't value their time. That's why they talk about time blocking, or they talk about, you know, like writing
Right.
your planner, like a schedule of what you're going to do. So 3 hours doesn't just whoosh by and you're like, what just happened? Like I picked up the phone from my aunt, you know, and I
Yeah.
had 3 things listed to do between 9 and 10, but I answered the phone,
Yeah.
right? My mom always answers the phone and I'm like, you don't have to pick that up. Well, it's your brother. And I go, so like we're talking, you don't need to pick it up. And hey, I'm talking to Julia right now. I'm like, just don't pick it up. So what are your thoughts on that?
Oh, those are all really good things. I thought it was interesting. They talked about the like the lottery winners, how they don't value doing anything and they get the money and because they don't value their time, because they don't value how it came to them, like they don't do anything with it.
And it's
I wrote
typically
down,
not people that have worked really hard to get to where they're at and then they win the lottery.
right,
Typically people who have always had a financial struggle and are just hoping something's going to like gift it to them. And then
right.
lo and
And then
behold, it does, but they don't have they've never had, you know, like those thoughts about money
yeah,
or the
yeah.
practice
I
of it.
wrote down efficiency is doing things right and effectiveness is doing the right things. And I
Mm,
love that. That was at the very, very beginning of chapter 4.
I
But
love
I
that.
like that because it's like, oh, you can be super efficient. But I'd rather be an effective person working on the right things.
Mhm.
I was talking to David about how joining this mastermind was a massive who for me because my business coach is like, she's already done it before. And just walking through her process and just trusting it and just implementing everything she's saying to implement versus trying to go at it alone. I've gotten farther I have in ever in the past 6 weeks just because I'm working on it in a different way and allowing someone else to help me. And like, I never would have gotten that far on my own. So I definitely, like, I just love this whole concept. Um, and I liked the story about the people asking them when they're going to die, like what year, how old they're going to be, and what they're going to do the year before they die, like how they're going to feel, what activity they're going to be doing, how they're going to be living, all of that. And then, well, if you're living that way, like how many more years do you think you'll have? 10 to 15, and like,
Right.
and like, how are you living that way now? And just helping them see that that's possible for them to start living that way now instead of waiting until they're 80 plus years old. Um, yeah, I think this is just a very valuable concept. All of it is just really good and has had my mind just thinking in lots of different ways and just getting creative, like what I said earlier about like whose don't necessarily have to cost a ton, like whose can be your kids,
Mhm.
whose can be the neighbor kids that you want to do like some obnoxious chore that you don't want to do.
Mhm. There was a kid last year saying, I'll take everything out of your garage, organize it better. Anything you don't want, I'll take to Goodwill, $100.
Oh my gosh, yes, please.
Now, this is not like a California garage where like all your stuff is. Indiana garages have less because they have basements, but I'm like, that is so smart because
Yeah,
he's making $100. Someone was like, he should charge way more. And I'm like, not really, because he's just solving a problem. And
yeah,
some will take 3 hours and some will take 6 hours. And either way, he gets the same amount of money. And he's solving
yeah,
like a very basic that would actually be really nice. And it's not 500. I'll do it. You know,
right,
we had just moved. So we were like, oh, but if he did it again this summer, I'd be like, yeah, come help me weed through.
right.
Um, the beginning quote in chapter 5, and also like what you were saying, I remember hearing a story about a guy that was like, oh, my kids are my priority, my kids is my priority, and he's like, when's the last time you like went to his game? And he's like, well, my work is so busy. And so he was like, so he's not your priority. And he's like, oh no, I do everything for my kid. And he's like, but he's not your priority then. And so it's like, how can you, like, this whole book is about how can you literally farm stuff off so you are at his game, not to
Yeah,
say every game or you can never miss one because you're working, you're at an event, like you're going to miss some games. But if
right.
that's something you want to do, is you don't attend any games because you're working. Like my dad, when he was working in the afternoons in San Francisco, that's when I had all my tennis matches. And I remember being like, Dad, you make all the basketball games because they're 8 at night, but you have made 0 tennis matches in 3 years because they were at 4:30. And what could
Mm,
life have been like if he had said, I can't make all of them, but I'm going to make 2 every season. And so I'm going to hire a who and ask them to take over for 3 hours so I can go hit my daughter's game, you know?
yeah,
Like what that would have meant to me and changed, like influenced our relationship, and
mhm,
how most people, the first line is, but I can't, versus we're
yeah,
learning like, well, if you can't, it's not that important and that's okay. But if it
right,
really is, then absolutely you can find someone to help you out so that you can go.
right,
Like for the things that are important, which so it says, you know what you're committed to by your results, not by what you say your commitments are. And I think
right,
it's really direct and kind of harsh. So maybe it means you realign, what am I really committed to? And is it what's social? Like maybe your kids are not your top commitment. That's okay. Right. But at least just being honest with yourself and saying, if my kids are my commitment, I don't need to spend time with them Monday through Sunday, but every Sunday I'm committing to this, or every week I'm committing to 30 minutes per kid on these days scheduled in because they're important to me. And then just like
yeah,
schedule it in, you know? And it doesn't have to be an all or nothing, which I think happens with mothers, right? That it's like, if I'm
right,
not staring at my kids all the time, I'm not a good mom. And if I'm like interacting with them at the park and then feeding them dinner and then tucking them into bed, I'm not good. But you
right.
can spend chunks of quality time and still accomplish your dreams and the things that are important to you. Hi.
Arizona doesn't change time. So that
Oh,
I was like 6:30 and I'm like, oh my gosh, we're the same time as Pacific Standard Time now. So that's I'm sorry.
that's so funny. Okay, no worries. We're just finishing up and we're on chapter 5. So, and this goes into exactly what I just said, which is what I want. And I'm just only speaking for myself. She wanted freedom of time to be a mom. she wanted freedom of money to have the life she knew she could have for herself and her family. And so I've always wanted it to not be either or, like I'm a full-time worker or I'm a full-time mom. I wanted the freedom of time to work and be a mom in the way that
Yeah.
I choose and the seasons that I choose and the amounts that I choose throughout the year and the years. That's something that I personally want, but I don't want to do it while, like they're saying, grinding and killing myself. I do want to work hard and have seasons where I am all in and grinding, and it is a massive sacrifice on the family because I think that's the only way to get ahead. You can't just casually like do your dreams forever. Like there has to be points of like 60 days of pushes, twice a year at least, and different, parts of the month where you are pushing really hard and you have these deadlines and you're staying up till 3 and those things. But also then the freedom of time to be like, now that I hit that, we're going to celebrate by doing this. And I'm
Mhm.
fully all in and my phone is not here and I am present. So like this lady moved to Hawaii, which is what my brother did. And I'm like, oh. But he wanted the freedom to be a lawyer and surf and not be in New York running the grind, sending his kids to private school and just running and running and running. He wanted to be a bigger fish in a smaller sea, not a big fish with millions of big fish. And he
Yeah.
did that in Hong Kong where he was like, he would come home for dinner and then he would go back to work. My brother did it for a while where he was like literally sleeping under his desk. And
my
at
God.
30, the doctor said, if you don't figure out a workout plan, you're going to have a heart attack because it was like sitting and working, sleeping under a desk, going out to like rich, like buttery steak dinners and then sitting again. And it was like killing his like internal system, working in all like the stress, right? And so it's like, that's a way, but people are sitting here saying like, what would be like amazing though? And then how she committed. And I love that she lived in Hawaii and her whole team was in Minnesota or something random.
Mhm.
So like this lady moved to Hawaii, still employed and grew a whole team in the Midwest, but was living her dream with her time
Who is it talking
flexibility.
about?
Huh?
Who is it talking about?
A lady,
Jenna Kutcher? Sounds like Jenna Kutcher.
Nicole Whip, a
Okay.
young attorney in Michigan.
Yeah, in chapter 5.
It's in chapter 5. So she was doing everything herself as a lawyer, like for her own firm. And then finally was like, I can't do this. I want a family. So she started hiring parts of it out, grew her own thing, but again, allowed them to fly because she created her vision of what she wanted and then said, go do what you need to make that happen. And I like how she said, I want the Who's to build confidence in themselves that she already has in them. So that's a big thing of the people that we hire. Another thing I've taken away is you cannot micromanage the people on your team and grow as much as you want. You have to say, here is my vision. This is what I want. And I want you to be on board for the end result. However you get there is on you. I'm going to go this way. It might not be the way for you, right? I'm going to create reels. Maybe you do better at going live. Maybe you do better at a written post. Maybe you suck at writing. And so going live is better for you. However you're going to do it, just show up in your best way. Maybe none of those are good for you because you have such a good home network that you want to just host things at your home and have in-person things where you want to really look people in the eyes and connect with people. Like whatever is up to you, it's not up to me to say, well, you need to do this to be successful. But like, I love when they'll reach out to team members and say, like, what do you think would be the most successful for you? Like, I don't know. What do you know about yourself? Right. And so she pushed her person to speak, which has happened to me, which has happened to people on my team, pushing people to share their story. The first time I shared my health story, I was like, like I wrote it on Post-its and I was like, I was in front of like 50 people and I'm like, this is so dumb. I hate speaking. Now I can speak in front of like thousands of people and not care. But back then I was really nervous, but it pushed me out of my comfort zone because I believed in what I was doing. And I love that it said she was having a transformational experience. And with her leader's encouragement, she broke through emotional obstacles, which is like a gift that we have by leading people in the right way, is to really help them grow and stand in their truth and become more confident and like develop their talents and allow their light to shine to more people versus like hiding it out of just lack of practice, fear, overthinking, all of those things, but to really kind of pull positive things out of people in an encouraging way.
Yeah.
I love that it says you help them build confidence so they can make their own decisions and take their own risks. And that is a good leader because that will apply to everything in their life, not just you working this business with them. And then every member of your team needs a strong sense of purpose in order to be motivated to act. So this is why it's important to me. Do you want to be on board? What's important to you? What do you want out of this? Then I'm going to invest in you because I want to see that happen for you, right? I might want a cabin and someone else might just want their money in retirement, or they want to pay for something else. Or like these random examples, like only so many people are going to want to take their grandma to a baseball game, right? But if you don't ask those questions, you'll never know that that's so important to that person while you're like going for this other vision. So like finding out, what does success look like for you on your team? How can I help you get there? And this is what it looks like for me. Do you want to be a part of this? Then like everyone like loves that thing. It's like everybody's winning. And I love that. I'm excited to grow more of that feeling. Because like you're a part of having me get to here. And then when they get to there, you're a part of them getting to there. And so everybody's hooing each other and winning.
Yeah.
Patricia, do you have any thoughts on this so far?
No, I like what you're saying. I actually really like the time freedom too. That's, the time and the money freedom. Who doesn't want that? And so I actually sat down and I wrote some things down. So I understood what you were saying last week when you were like, you want other people to do, and I'm like, but I can't imagine somebody watching my underwear like. But no, I understand it because then it moves you forward to do what's more important or more,
Yeah.
and then as a result, you make more money, you help more people, and the people that are on your team or that are helping you, they have better and bigger experiences too. And I like the word, was it Bob Heilig uses it too, right? Transformational, not transactional.
Mm.
And so, yeah. So
That's about the human spirit versus like the process.
right. And
And
so I was
even just
making a
thinking
list
about like how we're saying we hiring our kids, like our kids want to be a part of something.
yeah.
You know, like we're like, oh, well, that's just an easy way because we have the kids and they want to earn $5. But when you win, your kids win, right? When you go on stage, when you buy that car for your family, when you pay off that debt, like share that with your kids. Like, this is what we're doing with what I'm creating. This is why I'm doing it. We've had a lot of conversations like that with my kids. Like when I hit different ranks in my company, my kids were like, are you there yet? Like, did you get it? Did you get the thing? Did you win the prize? Like you went to convention. Did you get the stickers? Like they want to, my girls especially, like they want to be a part of something and they're excited because you're excited because they're excited, And then we used to set goals and say like, what do you think we should do when mom hits here and when mom hits here and when mom hits here? And they'd be like, I want to go camping. And I was like, okay, or I want to get ice cream. And I'm like, okay, let's do that, like, and have those things for your family and have those things for yourself. So your kids aren't like, man, when you're a mom or a wife, you just hustle and you're just working your kids and you're working your business. And that's just a lot of work, right? Like mom hit that goal and got a facial. Mom hit that goal and went to Disneyland. Mom hit that goal and went to like Hawaii with dad or her girlfriends. You know what I mean? Like then I would look at my mom and be like, dude, go mom, right? Especially if you're involved in it. And I think that was like a different generation where they were like, my mom works, so she's not at home. My mom worked, so I never saw her. My friend had a mom in network marketing and she was just never around. She was always with her friends at her parties. So she hated it. She ended up marrying a guy who co-owns a company like that. And she goes on all the trips. But it's funny because she finally, years after being friends with me, was like, I see it. I see. And she told her mom, I know why you did it now. I know that it was reading books and it was growth and it was personal development. And I just didn't see any of that as a kid. But that means her mom didn't share any of that. Her mom wasn't like, hold on, guys, I'm reading this cool book and I just learned this cool thing. And I want to tell you about this book that I've been reading at the dinner table, right? Or that I've realized that people are doing this and I'm going to start employing who's, or that you talk about these things. Or my favorite takeaways from this conference and convention I went to with your spouse, right? Like you're saying, you talked with David about what you're learning. Like if you don't pull them in, then it becomes something they're not a part of. And so what I read before was all they can see is it's less of you for them.
Mhm.
And
And
all
it's
the
hard.
thing is that thing that she loves is just something that's important to her, but we get less of mom. But if you can bring them in and if you can show them that I'm pulling these things in so I can grow more in my truth, then I think that as they get older, they'll do it themselves. And then they'll see the beauty of just like vision. And it really said here, like, when you do it all yourself, it's exhausting. And that's kind of what the American model, don't you think, has taught us? Like that
Yeah.
girl being her own lawyer and her own assistant. I'm sure her mom was like, well, honey, if you hire an assistant, that's $30,000 and then you're not making all the money, but surely you can send some emails. You know what I mean? It's kind of
Yeah.
like how we've been taught for years. It's just like, of course you can. Oh, come on. You can't stock your groceries.
Yeah.
Like you can't get your own gas. It's like 5 minutes of your time because
I
they're
find it
not seeing
annoying.
that it's
Annoying when people
pulling from
micromanage.
all of your filing cabinets up here. And we tell
He made a lot of
ourselves,
sense when he was talking about that too. Like when he was saying, you know, like he would be exhausted if he was
Yeah.
doing all those things. And I get that too. I used to work at a legal, I was like an office manager for a legal, like we like helped them in Century City in LA. And I was on call. So
I
I was
worked
working
there
like
before.
80, yeah, it was like 80 to probably almost 100 hours a week. Like it was exhausting. And I can't imagine, like I would never do that again. But because I had to be on call and then you had to do these things and you know there wasn't a ton of people working, so I get from where they're coming and I'd never want to do that again ever. So it makes more sense when you have more people involved, but and then you can learn from them too because not everybody thinks the same. You know, we're in the process of having you know, the celebration for Relief Society next Sunday, and so I'm supposed to be doing some things as a counselor and I did them, but the person who's under me is micromanaging it, and I'm just like, chill, it's done. Like I promise I did it the way you asked me to do it. And so it's annoying to be like, you know, micromanaged. Like it doesn't inspire uh it doesn't inspire trust, I guess
Yeah.
is the
Well,
thing.
like I did like we had an idea to do a floral arranging class, but I wasn't like, and can you make the flowers look like this picture on Pinterest? Like, you know, part of me, the old me would be like, I hope they're good. Like I've actually never seen her work. So this is kind of the style that I like, you know, but I really was just like, can I go with you? I want to actually see where you buy them. And then I was like, I like these. She's like, those are too expensive. I'm like, okay. And I'm like, but she said, of this, we probably need something in this area. Why don't you pick a color? And I was like, oh, so I picked a color and then she picked like 80% of it, but she allowed me to pick a couple. And then I literally was just like sitting down ready to learn. And because of that,